Hey everybody, my name is Axel Villimil. Welcome back to 24 Shades of Blue. I'm here with Deputy Chief Peter Yuen. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
You're doing okay?
Yeah.
I just said I look great because you look great.
Well, this is my uniform.
Two great, good-looking Asian men in this room for Asian Heritage Month.
Well, now you're making me a little bit. I blush. You know, at my age, you know what? At least I look decent. I'm good enough with that.
The jeans did well. We're happy you're here. We're excited. I think this is a very an interview that's close to home for me, especially with everything that's going on in the world. And the fact that you're playing this role as an Asian officer is definitely something that I'm very interested in, but also something that I see you as a role model for other, Asian men that also want to get into that industry as well. So I just want to know what were your experiences that maybe have differed as an Asian officer especially in Toronto.
Well, I've been a police officer for over 33 years, and certainly you look at the Toronto today compared to 33 years ago. Toronto is vastly different, and I even use the Asian community for example. Back in when I first arrived in Canada in the 1970s, there were one street. It was called Chinatown, and if you want dim sum, you want barbecue pork, it was every Saturday. You have to line up, and I remember my dad taking me there, and my mom. It was a treat. And it's like something that you look forward to for the whole month because we take the bus and we travel almost 2 hours to Chinatown, one street, University in Dundas. And you line up to get the barbecue pork or the duck. So, and you see the city transform right in front of your eyes into where we are, the most diverse city in the world. So it's a feeling that is hard to describe, but I'm happy that I have been part of this and I'm continuing to see the city grow. Why did I become a police officer? It's quite ironic. Every immigrant family, and I speak for East Asian, South Asian, Europeans. We came here. Our parents worked 20 hours a day. I was left to look after my younger brothers and sisters. So these are stories that are commonly shared amongst my friends. When we used to play basketball, when we used to hang out after school, it was the same thing. We went home, cooked dinner for our younger brother, sister, look after them, and went to school. We rarely get to see our parents. And like everyone else, my parents wanted me to go to university, which I did. Mm-hmm. But they were very narrow choices for me. I remember going back home, back then we had grade 13 for the audience that had never heard of grade 13. Grade 13 yes. was a thing in the past. I went home and told my parents I'm going to university, and my dad said, well, that's expected of you. And then dad said that. Yeah. Then he said, "What are you taking?" I said, "I'm going to York University to take history." I think I was younger. I ran faster than my dad. Yeah. Because the whip came out and says, "You're not taking history. No, you're taking engineering."
Right in the stems, right?
All those things. You want to be business. Mm-hmm. Your marks weren't good enough to be a doctor, but I want you to be a engineer or a business person. I said, "Well, neither interests me." So after 2 years, I dropped out, and it was a compromise. And I said, "You know what? I want to be a police officer." And he says, "Why?" I said, "You know what? You're looking at the city, and the Chinese community is growing." And I did some homework, and there were only 4 Chinese officers on the job at that time.
Wow!
And 3 of them were Canadian-born. They didn't speak a word of other than English. They didn't speak Chinese. Mm-hmm. So I thought I could offer something. But I did make a pact with my dad and my mom. I said, yes, I dropped out, but I will promise you, eventually I'll finish my school. I will get that degree. It's just like you watch the NBA, you watch NFL. Yeah. Some of these players that left school early, but they promised their parents and the community, I will get that degree. And I did. So that's how it began. Was it an easy journey? It was definitely not an easy journey.
I was just going to ask you, what was the progression like of that?
When I joined the service, the tail end of 1887, I don't think people were racist. I just don't think they got it. I was the only non-white person in a class of, wow. Yeah. But keep in mind, I grew up in Canada. Mm-hmm. I came here at an early age, and I grew up, I sort of understand. Of course. The culture a little bit. So I got along a little bit, and I certainly knew all the derogatory terms and all the racist terms. But yes. I don't think the officer were meant to be racist, but they didn't understand what they were saying, how the impacts. And I'll give you an example. Notoriously, there's a stereotype, Asian people can't drive. Mm-hmm. So as a police officer, you have to go through driver's training.
Yes.
So, like anyone else, I went for driver's training. So at the end of the day, the whole class, I believe there are maybe one or two non-whites, but it was predominantly white officers. We got along. So the final graduation day, after you're graduating driver's training, so the instructor came up to me and gave me a certificate. I said, that's strange. He goes, Pete, congratulations. I said, what for? You're the first Chinese officer in the history of Toronto Police Service. Got certified on your first try. When you first showed up, we thought we had a headache that you'd be going to get retest. And the whole class laughed.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And at that time, I said, okay, they really believe it was fun.
Yeah.
But I also knew I had to laugh to get along.
Of course. Yeah. It's an odd situation.
It was very odd. But I really don't, looking back that day, I really believe there was no racist intent. They thought it was funny. They thought it was a joke. But from the recipient. But you fast forwarded to 2021, if this was played out today,
that would not
have been acceptable.
Yeah.
So then, you know what? Went to my first station, 42 Division. 42 Division back then, it's in Scarborough, Finch and Brimley. The reason I was sent there, I was told very explicitly why I was sent to 42 Division, because at that time in the late 80s, it was the fastest growing Chinese community in the city of Toronto, and they needed a Chinese officer. So I walked into a division. I remember I was working midnight shift. The first night, I was supposed to start at 11. That was my first shift. I did a little homework. 42 Division has approximately 200 officers. There was one black officer and all male whites. I said, okay, here we go. Let's go. So I walked in with my duffel bags and everything to the front desk and say, I'm reporting for duty. And then, once again, I do not believe was racism. I believe that's what it was expected back then. I was told, someone from the back of the desk said, we didn't order any Chinese food, man.
It was just the time, right?
It was the time.
And it's the time where that was acceptable. And
it was acceptable then, but you also knew, hey.
You felt it though, microaggression.
You felt it. Yeah. But then you also say to yourself, I hope that I will have a career and I can make a difference. And these are things that, I always say this, don't let history define who you are. Remember what history has taught us and move forward and make it better. Absolutely. And those are the instances that were embedded into my mind. But I wasn't angry. But I think we needed to educate and making sure our colleagues, the community understand we bring value. And it doesn't matter what community, Toronto being the diverse city we are, each one of us brings value. Absolutely. To the table, and to us collectively, we can make the city a little bit better, and the police service a little bit better.
No, for sure. And I think that role, you put yourself in. Me just in my experiences, I've definitely felt a lot of those microaggressions where I wouldn't say anything. But I think, one of the great things that you did do was put yourself in a place where Hollywood would never actually show an Asian cop. It'd be like an Asian nerd or, a somebody who was like a martial artist, things that would fit in the stereotypical category. But you paved the way, right? You're out of the four, that of officers starting out that were, Asian Canadians. And so you were there, making way for more people to be seen and feel seen in what they're doing. So let's talk about that. How has it changed since then? And then now, how has the force grown with diversity as well?
Well, definitely. I said earlier, Axel, when I joined, there were 4 other Asian officers. So back then, it was very difficult to have some mentorship. And when you run into problems, you like to go to your own group,
of course,
to seek some mentorship, some guidance. I didn't have many.
Yeah.
So because the officer, it was very few and far between. So but I sought out people that I can relate to and I spoke with. But having said that, these 33 years has been rapidly changing.
Yeah.
I can tell you, we have over 200 Asian officers now, and the numbers are growing. And it's not because of me. It's collectively the Toronto Police Service and the Asian officer. We're promoting the goodness of policing, why we need to be there, who we are. Why is this as a noble professional joint? So we're seeing more Asian candidates applying. And that's very positive because Axel, in the Asian heritage, culture, policing wasn't looked upon as a very noble profession.
No.
Where I came from in Hong Kong, police officers were corrupt. They were lowly educated, very poor pay, and they were more of a blue-collar worker, and the parents and the elders were frowned upon. So this is something we had to forward that and promote what policing is all about in Canada. And we have done a great job. Our work cannot stop, because I say this to you, we have more than over 200 Asian officers, but that number can continue to grow, because you look at the population of Asian Canadians in City of Toronto is quite large. So,
quite large, yeah.
And certainly I know there are a lot of qualified candidates in our community, So certainly, my role, and sometimes people say you're the ambassador. Well, if I am, then great. But whether I am or not, it's my job to promote the policing as a viable profession, and also attracting more of a qualified members from the Asian communities and also other communities, because I don't see myself only as an Asian Canadian promoting policing within the community. I see myself as a Canadian first. And then when I go there, I reach out to all communities and talk about the goodness of policing, the connections we make, and the contributions we can make working together. Yeah,
and I think the idea of being Canadian, has changed, over the years, right? So, as much as you say you may or may not be that symbol, you existing in this role is a huge symbol, not just for the officers, but for people like myself, and that see you in where you are today. So you got to be proud of yourself for that. And we look up to you in that sense. Obviously, we're all looking at you like, is this Rush Hour 2? I don't know. But it's
I am very humble with all the accolades.
Yeah.
I say this to you. When I first joined a job, I want to do well. I want to do good for the community. But however, the journey has taken me to this stage, and I'm extremely fortunate, and I met a lot of good people along the way. My mentors, members with the Toronto Police Service, and external members, community members, that have given me a lot of help. And you know what? I'll say this. Some people says must be all hard work. I'll say hard work combined with a sprinkle of luck. Policing is all about luck. And it's the right place, right time, right opportunity. So these are all things that has to be taken into consideration. And I'm extremely humble. People said I'm a role model, but I say this to Axel, as a young person in the early 20s, I did not say to myself, I'm going to be a role model. If that is someone that seeing if I brought value to individuals or groups, and they see that in me, then I'm extremely humble and honored.
Because you came from it organically, right? You're just trying to do your job.
That's right.
And that's what it turned to.
I think most our officers join with the simple is to work with the community, enhancing public safety, and keeping the citizens of Toronto safe. What role, what rank, what position you get to, I personally can relate. It wasn't on my mind. I want to do the best I can. Absolutely. And also, I want to get home every day safe, because knowing policing could take a drastic turn any moment.
Of course.
When you're out there responding to, the public's request for help.
Yeah, let's talk about that though. You told me, in our pre-interview, we chatted about how you were working as an undercover cop, and you told me you had quite some heavy experiences, and I wanted to chat about that on how that was for you, not just I guess in your career, but emotionally. How was that?
I joined in the late 1980s, and that it coincided with the rise of the Asian organized crime in this city of Toronto. So if you look at it from 1989 to approximately 2000, that was the pinnacle, I would say, the golden years. And it's hard to associate crime with golden years, but those 10 years were the most violent, disruptive years of Asian organized crime. Axel, thank you. You say I'm a pretty good looking guy. And when I was young, I did hang out, on the basketball courts, on the pool halls. So I got a little bit of street smart. So my boss said, we needed someone to be undercover. Mm-hmm. The guy, best of all, the guy speaks the lingo.
Absolutely.
He knows. And he knows how to play all these different Asian gambling games. I said, wow, this is tailor-made.
Got your mahjong set out, right?
Oh, it's not even mahjong. Mahjong is for the
that's
for
the
lower
soft
tier.
ones, older. Yeah. Okay, got it.
Back then it was the pai gao.
Pai gao. Yeah, so pai gao poker. Huh?
This guy can speak English and can speak Chinese and can play pai gao. He can go to these things and also he can do a lot of things. So I was involved in. So they picked me, and I did a lot of undercover play for the TPS because they couldn't find anyone. And then maybe I was stupid enough because I watched too many Chinese movies. Because if you do more, because always in Chinese movie, Axel, if you are an undercover officer, you make a big bust, you get promoted quickly.
Exactly.
So I said, okay, let's go. This is good for me. So I've been involved with, buying counterfeit money, buying counterfeit credit cards, drugs, whole host of things, and certainly going into gaming houses to collect evidence, and do a lot of these transactions. So, I enjoyed it, but I hid that away from my parents.
Yeah.
And at that time, my girlfriend, because I did not want them to
You were the most dangerous people,
because I also know any undercover play, no matter how mundane it is, that could be your last play that you perform. So, it was a very, very mundane to me in 1990. You talk about it's still, it's still vividly, it's in my mind. It's on my mind. It will never get it out of my mind in my data bank. 1990, April 13th, Friday. Wow. All the settings are there, right? Friday the 13th,
Setting the movie right now.
Yeah, so I was asked to go into a gaming house to collect some evidence. To me, going in there as an undercover to play Pai Gao, to do all this stuff and to collect evidence on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of danger level, that's a 0.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that in my sleep.
Yeah.
So I went there, but it's like a movie, But when I left the house and I said bye to my girlfriend, I said, "You go have a good night." She doesn't know. She thought I was going to work, right, in uniform. I said, "Yeah, I got this bad feeling in my stomach." She goes, "What are you talking about?" "I may not come home tonight."
Wow.
She goes, "What are you talking about? Don't be an idiot, right?"
What does that feeling feel like? Let's talk more.
Well,
about
when you talk about this, just this eerie feeling. There was a knot in my stomach. I said, something may not go right.
Mm-hmm.
I just said to her, I gave her a kiss and I said, I may not come home tomorrow. Remember me. She goes, "What are you talking about? Go away." She just said, go away. Don't be such a joker, right? I know I can talk for this. I can talk about this for hours. Anyway, the play went bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the place were 40 people in a place gambling. And we were just hot and heavy gambling. I'm just doing my stuff, And then the place got robbed by 4 individuals with firearms.
Oh my God. What was going through your head?
I thought, I need to survive. Because undercover, one of the things that I was taught is no matter what happened, you'll get yourself out of there alive. And so I do have occasion to speak to future undercover courses. And some of the officers asked me, "Pete, what is undercover officer?" I said, being an undercover officer is being the best actor you can be. You got to play that role.
Yeah.
If you're a big roller, then you're a big roller. If you're buying counterfeit money, then you're into the counterfeit. You're in the drug business. You have to know the lingo and you act like it because you got to be convincing. So that night, usually during undercover work, we don't bring our badge in. But that night I brought my badge in. I'll tell you why. There was a little spin because I was good because we knew this gaming house was international control because it had money from Hong Kong, Macau. Yeah. I was going to play a corrupt cop.
Wow. Oh, that's a good spin.
So I was going to lose a lot of money, and then I'm going to ask to see the house manager. And when I see the house manager, I'm going to take out my badge and says, "Listen, I don't want to talk to you. Take me to your big guy. I want in." The play was bigger than just a simple gaming house takedown.
Love that.
The guys came in. I said, "Holy whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I said, "This is not good. 4 guys with handguns, like this is not a movie." So they ordered us it was a warehouse setting. So we all had to face to kneel down and, with our heads down. And one guy took a duffel bag and asked us to empty all our belongings into the bag.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not empty my badge. So he felt my backside. He said, "Empty that." So I thought, okay, that's cool. They're going to take their stuff and they're going to leave.
Yeah.
They didn't. I said, you're going to say, what do you mean they didn't? They didn't. After they got all our belongings, they stood there and started looking through their inventories.
Oh, they're just going through everybody's stuff.
Oh, we got a Rolex watch.
Yeah.
We got $2,000 here.
I see.
And then that's when they took out my badge.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember vividly. He says, "There's a cop in here. You want to introduce yourself?" That was in Chinese. I said to myself, hell no.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Then he says, "Okay, I guess we have to be a little bit more entertaining for you to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
He grabbed the girl next to him, and put the gun to her head and said, "I'm gonna count to 10. Identify."
Oh my God.
You know what?
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I'm a cop.
Yeah.
My job when I swore the oath of office is to protect life.
Of course.
My life is not. I have to put my life to protect the citizen. So I stood up. I said, "I'm the cop." So he made me go in front of them. There were 3 of them and one guy watching the door. And they told me to get on my knees, and they kicked the whatever out. They start beating on me. And then he said, beg for your life. And these things will never go away. Beg for your life. I said to myself, I remember in training school, never beg for your life. And I was going to say this. I had some pride, and I was stubborn. There were 40 people, or 50 people in that room. If this is the last breath I take on this earth, I'm not going to go away as a coward. I'm not going to beg for my life. I said, do as you will.
Of course. Yeah.
He put the gun in my mouth and pulled the trigger. The gun jammed. And that gun was recovered later on that evening and had my saliva sample on the barrel.
Holy.
After that incident, that's when the doorman says, the whole place has been surrounded by cops. Let's get the hell out of here. So that's how they left me. I was able to walk out of there. You know what? I'm speaking with you right now, Axel.
Yeah.
You cannot tell, but I can tell you there's emotions rushing through me. My whole body is chill right now because you never forget that moment when you're looking down at a gun is in your mouth, and the guy pulls the trigger, and you hear that click, and then you're still living. You know, a lot of the officers, and what got me really upset when I went out and told the officers, they said, "Nah, you were just hallucinating. That never happened. Never happened." But when they found the gun, they got my saliva sample on the barrel.
Peter.
You know what?
What a story.
At that time, I said, you know what? I'm going to do the best I can. Someone says, you could quit. I said, no. I'm destined for here. The reason I didn't go, someone up there wants me to stay here. My job's not done. I don't know what job that is. I'm not a deeply religious person. I was raised a Catholic boy. But I'm not, practicing Catholic. But I said, someone is sending me a message. My time on this planet, on this earth, is not done. Continue with your work.
I'm working really hard to try to talk here because I'm very speechless at this situation. But you're right. I think somebody's looking down, whatever or whoever, whatever that is. So when it clicked, let's talk about that real quick, if that's okay. What was in your head? Did you say, I can't believe that, or did you even register that it jammed, or you're just going, what happened?
I did not register anything. I just know
you're
why
just
am I
in
still
shock,
here,
right?
And then there was chaotic. People were crying. People were screaming.
And
then I just heard the guy from the door says, "Let's get the hell out of here. The place is surrounded by cops." Because anytime you do an undercover play, you have your backup officer. So obviously my backup officer saw what was going on.
Yeah.
So the ETF, all the cavalries arrived, and these bandits got away, and then it was a car pursuit. They were all apprehended.
Were you wired or anything? Could they hear?
No, you don't do that.
So they just knew.
They just saw bad. 4 guys barged in with guns, and they knew something happened in there. So that's what happened. You know what? I want to fast forward. This is what made me so committed with our generation officers. That night, I drove home alone. No one cared. After I came out of that gaming house, I went to the hospital and got checked out.
Yeah.
Back then, there were no psychological help. There were no wellness. Mm-hmm. They said, "You okay?" They gave me a pack of smoke and
go home.
Yeah. I don't cry. I cried standing in the shower by myself. My girlfriend was in bed, and my words about 10 hours ago almost came true. I never came home. And then after I went back to work 3 days, my boss told me, "Get back to work. That's enough."
Wow.
We're tough. We're police officers. So I'm so committed looking after the well-being of our members, making sure if they go through a traumatic incident, they get all the help, all the support they need. No one should be left alone.
Never.
Never.
Peter, you saved somebody's life though that day, right?
You know what? If I did, great. You know what? But there was also anger.
Of course.
Because the people that were there, they were egging on the guy to shoot me. But I did not understand why. I'm trying to save your lives. And these people are yelling, "Shoot the cop, shoot the cop." Now, you know, looking back, they were just self-preservation because they don't want to die. So they want someone to die. So I understand. But at that time, I was angry. But there weren't a lot of people to speak with. Remember I told you there were only 4 Asian officers.
Absolutely.
And so it was, you know, when I speak about this, I get emotional, I get choked up, and I get a little angry.
Yeah.
But angry, and I always say, don't let the past define who you are moving forward. I want to turn that anger and making sure our officer has the best connected help, wellness, psychological help.
Absolutely. I mean, you just came, you know, from living and breathing something that was so violent. Now you're seeing something like this happen to, I guess, our own people, you know, especially in the times that we're living in right now because of COVID, because of the crimes that are happening, because of the racism that's happening to Asians. And now that there's this huge representation of Asian officers, how are you, as well as, you know, clearly you are a mentor to them, how are you and the rest of the team dealing with the ongoing increase of violence, especially in the US? You know, just some stats that we have is that 45% of Asian adults say they've experienced racist incidents toward them. And in some parts of Canada, it's gone up by 350%.
For sure.
Like, I want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, you know what? Racism is not today's phenomena. It's been with us for many years.
And it's funny, just before you go on, I felt the exact same way. When everything happened, I said to myself, I was like, this is nothing new.
There's nothing new.
Sorry, I'll let you go on.
Nothing new. You know what? It's a lived experience not only for Asian Canadians, the Black Canadians, Indigenous, LGBTQ2S, they all experience that. So when people say, wow, how you feel? No, you should have asked me 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But one thing we do need to, as a community, as an Asian community, I'll speak to that now, is for us to understand our past. If you don't understand your past, you cannot relate to the current context.
No.
And I've been speaking with a number of officers. I said, what happened in Canada? What happened to opium? What happened to our forefathers that came here with the head tax? Understand our historic context, then understand the barriers, the challenges, and then understand your history, understand your roots. You cannot speak on racism or barriers in isolation. Has to be a continuum. Understand what you have, where we've been, how we were treated, how we progress, how we work with different groups, and then now take it to a current context. Myself personally, I know there's a need to be that voice.
Yeah.
And also to encourage people that have a voice to speak up for people that do not have the voice or may not want, may be afraid to have that voice, their voices heard. So it's my job, it's my duty.
And even from a language barrier, you know, you have sons and daughters working to speak on behalf of their parents and grandparents.
You know, I met with a large group of Asian officers, and I'm very clear with them. Understand our past. And I speak with my officer. I said, you know, you guys got kids. What do they know about the last spike? They said, what are you talking about? What is the last spike? Is it a volleyball move? I said, no. Go to BC, British Columbia, and visit last spike. You stand there, it's surreal. This is where Asian Canadians were brought over here, paying head tax, cannot see their families. This is where the last spike was laid. And to see the picture when the Canadian railroad was built, not a single Chinese person was in that photograph. And ask yourself, these are our forefathers. Understand their struggles. They paved the way for us. So now you're experiencing Asian hate or racism. Remember who they were. Honor their past. And now it's your turn to speak up. But if you don't know the context, you will not be able to speak up. Absolutely. So it's my job, and I will do as many, you know, informal, formal, have conversations and talk about this. But it's not only about Asian hate. It's a hate, period. You see it with the Jewish community, with the Black community. So this kind of things has to be eradicated and has to be continued conversation. It's not a one-time, we talk about Asian Heritage Month. Okay, Black History Month. These should be an everyday conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I really just felt shocked and almost, you know, absolutely horrified by the hate in the videos you're going to see. But again, it's just something that I've always known. And explaining that to people who are not Asian was very difficult for me, because they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, years and years and years of microaggressions build up to a bunch of things. And it was hard because, you know, I was in the same position as you as a child, whereas my parents, you're going to go in the STEMs, which I did.
Yes.
But clearly, as you see, that didn't happen. I used them to create, 3 companies, and, I went in a different route. But I think with the things with hate, with all the things we're talking about, it's about changing the narrative. And by you being in your position, you sharing that very emotional story, it's for us to all understand and see that there's many different avenues of just because you're Asian doesn't mean you just fit in one role, and just
That's
because
right.
you're Asian doesn't, or black or white, Latino, whatever you are, you don't have to be defined to one thing. And I think you being here today through that story clearly shows that that's not the case. And, I want to talk more about how you and what you do on the force transcends to the rest of the communities that aren't just Asian. I want to talk about that, what you do with them.
Sure. I really believe in being genuine, being compassionate, and have that willingness to work with community. You listen to a little bit of what my past was, but throughout my career, I have invested myself, and I want to work with the community, because until we get to know who we're working with and our community members, doesn't matter where you come from, policing will always will be sort of reactive. We have to be proactive, and the community has to have a buy-in. And one of the things that I am very, very cognizant is we cannot prescribe policing. We don't want, it's like, I told you so. This is the way we do it.
Yeah.
In the past, it was. It can't do that anymore. Everything we do as a police service has to be through consultation, by consent from our community members, how they would like to be policed. And that's not even the word, because some people will say, how would you like to be policed? Hang on a minute. That's just by having that narrative, you're exhibiting certain superiority over individual. My language is, how would you like us to provide services with you, okay, to the community? So it's important. It's really important for me, and this is something that I stress and every day, and I pride myself that I can walk into all communities and say, this is who I am, and they get to know me, and I've done it, and I will continue to do so. I can walk into any community, whether rich, rich and famous, or racialized, they know who Pete Yuen is, and that's when I get that acknowledgement, I know we're connecting. If we can connect as human being, then the work ahead will not be done. It's extremely important to me, and this is where if I do mentoring, if I speak with young people, and this is it's about connecting with people. You cannot, if you don't connect, then all's lost, because
Absolutely.
It's not us versus them. This is not, a lot of people look at the police officer, you guys are warriors. We're not warriors. We're service providers. Let's get that get that clear. Warriors is very much a violent, colonial type of talk. This is, we're 2021. Actually, you're much younger than I, but I don't want my son, who's 24 years old. And, speaking of my son, I am shocked, because he was a typical Chinese kid. He went and got engineering degree. I am shocked.
You were like, okay.
I said, okay. And he got a honors in engineering. I said, okay. And then
You're like the most woke Asian parent, by the way, I've ever met.
A year ago, he came home and said, Mom and Dad, I want to talk. I said, oh no, now what? He puts a form in front of me. I just joined the Toronto Police Service. You're like, I said, you're like, stop it. It was New Year's Day, 2020, New Year's Day. This is a joke, right? You went to school, you
did all this work.
All this stuff, great student, smart kid. And then you never told me that you want to be a police officer.
Yeah.
Really? So now he's been a police officer for 6 months now. I'm very proud of him. But I don't want, in 2035, Axel is still in the business and interview my son and talk about Asian hate, Asian racism, or anything else. This cannot continue.
No.
We have to make a difference. So when someone asks me, what does Asian Heritage Month mean to me? It's about our history, understanding. It's about our present. It's about our future.
Absolutely.
Our present, what we do, how we do it, set the tone for the future. And the future is where I don't want to talk about this in 30 years if I'm still alive, or my son is still on the job as a police officer and talking to the next Axel or Axel in person about this again. Then we're gone full circle. We have not done anything.
Damn right. Now, are there any organizations that Toronto Police, just to wrap up here, that they work with in regards towards Asian Heritage Month?
We work with numerous Asian, like we work with the Chinese Cultural Center. As a matter of fact, we will be producing a series of videos to celebrate Asian Heritage Month from community members, from Senator Vivian Poi, who was the first fine lady who introduced the bill for Asian Heritage Month 20 years ago. So we work with Chinese Cultural Center, youth groups such as Vision Youth, and we also work with seniors because we never can forget the seniors. They were the one that paves the way, like Mong Shang, Yi Hong, and Care First. We work with a lot of agencies, but we don't exclusively work with Asian organizations that promote Asian Heritage Month. We go into different shelters. We go into food banks and making sure everybody, because we want to be inclusive.
Absolutely.
It should not be Asian Heritage Month, Black History Month. Every day should be inclusive, talking about these issues that matters to all of us.
Absolutely. End of the day, we want to get away from hate. We want to go and make sure, again, like you said, we don't want to be talking here again in 30 years about the same thing. We got to be here for the change. And I just want to thank you, and the rest of the team here wants to thank you for sharing your amazing story. Everybody, Peter Yuen. My name's Axel Villimil, and that's 24 Shades of Blue. We're out.